Welcome back to another episode of the MacRumors Show. I am Dan. We have Hartley here as usual, and today, making his second appearance, we have our friend Luke Miani. Luke, how are you? Are you finally adjusted to the States time zone after being in New Zealand and Australia for the launch?
Dude, it took me a long time. I don't really get jet lagged, but I don't think I've talked about this, but I think I got food poisoning on the day of travel coming back. So I woke up at 5 a.m. to go to the airport, felt awful, got on the plane, almost threw up on the plane, 12 hours, landed in LA at 6 a.m., went through immigration, feeling terrible. I felt like I was 98 years old. I got on the plane, another 5 hours to get home. It was terrible. So it took me like 2 weeks to adjust back to the time in the U.S.
But tell everybody why you were there, because it was, we were going to have you on earlier, but you're like, I can't, and it'll make sense why. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
got something going on.
Yeah, I think you messaged me about coming on the show right after the event, I think. Yeah. Or right before the launch. I can't remember. And I was like, I will not be able to do that because that was my day that I was on the plane. Mm-hmm. And so basically the way this all started was back in like February, I think. I hit up Sam because we both went. And I was like, hey, you know how like there's always a post the evening before the iPhone launch, on MacRumors, and it always says customers in New Zealand and Australia receive new X iPhone ahead of launch in the rest of the world. That's always the headline. And I was like, well, why don't we just go there and do it? Just get the phones early. So we did.
That's a great idea. And you get to be in Australia and New Zealand. How long were you there for? A couple weeks?
We were there we were in New Zealand for like 3 days. That was just a brief stopover, and then we were in Australia for a week.
What was the iPhone crowd like launch day crowd because you've experienced it in the States. What's it like over there?
Yeah.
Is it different?
I mean, it's actually quite similar just because of the new pickup strategy that Apple does. Like, you don't really see the lines anymore here or there. It's, people line up for their pickup window, but it's not like a huge line. Yeah. I was very surprised though at how much Sam in particular and I got recognized. Like, we were not expecting. I don't have a huge Australian audience, but literally I think 5 people in the Apple store were like, are you Sam from Apple Track? And wait a minute, is that Luke Miani? We were very surprised.
If there's ever a place where folks like us would be recognized, it is
it's always
Apple
stores.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's not like I walk down the street and people are like, hey, it's Dan from Macro. Like, that does not happen usually. Yeah. But you go to the Apple store and it does happen. And in my own hometown Apple store, I'll have people be like, did I just see Dan at the Apple store in Eaton? And I'll be like, yeah, yes, you did. I live here. I'm here quite a bit.
That makes sense.
So
there was a while when the butterfly keyboard repair program was a thing, and I was, of course, I was like, all right, let's take them in. Go. There was a while where the people at my local Apple store were like, hey, Luke, another butterfly keyboard? And I was like, you know it, and then we'd send it off.
Well, is there a reason for you to go to the Apple store in the next few weeks to pick up that awesome new Apple Pencil that was just launched yesterday?
Man, I've got 7 videos planned. I'm going to do unboxing. I've got the Apple Pencil comparison, the ultimate shootout.
Day in the life.
Day in the life of the new Apple Pencil. I was going to do what's in my Apple Pencil case. Do one of those. I've got a ton of content planned. It's very exciting.
This was like a weird week because someone out there said new iPads is coming, and then it just kind of like took off, and there were lots of conflicting reports. And on one side you had people who don't usually do that, and then on the other side you have Mark Gurman and Ming-Chi Kuo who are like, nah, it's just not. That's not what we're saying. And then there were some little ones in between that were like Apple Pencil 3, the 3rd generation with all these magnetic tips that are replaceable for different types of you know, I don't know, sizes, I guess. And then it ended up just being I don't even know what to call it, just a USB-C replacement of the first gen, but with the Apple Pencil 2 design.
And it doesn't have pressure sensitivity. Like, what's the point of this product? It's USB-C, sure, so you could argue that it's a replacement to the first gen, but then it's also not as useful as the first gen because a lot of people that seriously use an Apple Pencil need the pressure sensitivity. So I really don't know what this is for.
I'm guessing just students? Note-taking?
I guess so.
See, I was more into the idea of, like, people saying there's going to be iPads this week and, like, being pretty like, confident in that statement. And then being like, or there could be a new Magic... why do I keep saying Magic Pencil? Just rename it to Magic Pencil.
I agree.
Just rename it to Magic Pencil, because that
you have
sounds
Magic
better
Keyboard, Magic Pencil.
Got a Magic Pencil. No, like, and then they were like, no, a new Apple Pencil 3 with all these features, and then it just ended up being the most just underwhelming thing that could have possibly. And it's not Apple's fault. This episode of the MacRumors Show is sponsored by Factor. With a busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, you'll eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. The fall means kids going back to school and different activities are ramping up, so we really need these quick and easy, and most importantly, healthy Factor meals at the ready to get us through the day. You can level up with Gourmet Plus options, prepared to perfection by chefs, and ready to eat in record time. Treat yourself to upscale meals with premium ingredients like broccolini, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. I am personally a massive fan of the jalapeno cheddar chicken and spicy cauliflower rice, and it was so good that I'm just sad I don't have one to eat like right now. This October, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. It's all ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. So head to factormeals.com/Mac50 and use code Mac50 to get 50% off. That's code Mac50 at factormeals.com/Mac50 to get 50% off. Thanks, Factor, for sponsoring this episode. I do want to talk about some of those rumors, though, about the iPads that were supposed to happen this week, apparently. Because I think this will I don't know, is it going to muddy the waters even more with the whole lineup being a mess? Because what were we like told by these people that were apparently expecting rumors to happen? We were told what, a refreshed iPad, so that'll be the 11th gen, which would basically just be internal chip updates, potential iPad mini, and maybe an iPad Air, and pretty much all of those are just getting spec bumps, correct?
Yeah, so spec bumps and a couple of other little improvements.
What are those improvements, Hartley? Go ahead and tell us.
Those improvements would be improved jelly scrolling on the iPad mini. So I don't know if it would be completely mitigated.
More jelly?
Yeah, less jelly.
Oh, no, okay. So we're reducing the jelly.
Like
now introducing twice as much jelly scrolling.
I mean, I don't even think they'd mention it but it's so contentious. Apple don't even like acknowledging it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah, there's that, and then there's
that makes sense.
Camera improvements was also on the table. Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all three of those iPads have the same camera hardware. Front and back. Maybe the entry level doesn't have quite the same, but the iPad Air and iPad Mini definitely have the same, and that is the same as the iPad Pro as well. So, and that I think has been the same for like 5 years, pretty much, on the iPad Pro as well. So at some point, we've got to see some better hardware coming. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's too ambitious to expect the 48 megapixel sensor coming to the iPad just yet, but who knows? It's got to happen at some point. I don't know who needs to take 48 megapixel pictures with their iPad, but fair enough if that's you. I don't really know what else. I think that was it, really.
I mean, I think, isn't that kind of emblematic of what we were talking about with the problem of the iPad? When it comes to refreshing the lower end of the range, there's not a whole lot to give it. You know, okay, up the cameras, take out an M1, put in an M2. I think the Mini would go from an A15 to an A16, and the 10th gen from is it a 15 to a 16 as well, or
A14?
I don't even know. Like
A15, I guess.
Oh, that's on a 14. Okay, so I guess that would go to a 15. The Mini would go to a 16. The M1 would go to a 2. There's your upgrade.
I don't think it really makes a tangible difference to how you use it at all.
Oh, not at all.
Didn't we did a whole episode where we like went through a bunch of the lineups and tried to figure out like how to fix the way it's lined up, the names and all of that. And I believe with the iPad, I said, and if I didn't, I am officially changing my stance to this. I believe I said the iPad should just be like, take the 10th or 11th gen, whatever the base model is, make that like an iPad SE, low end, $200 if you can, make it bare bones as possible. That's going to be like the family iPad. You got the iPad, just a regular iPad would be the iPad Air. So we're just kind of cleaning things up a little bit. And then you have the iPad Pro. And what to do with the iPad Mini, I guess you could just, my thought process behind that was just making like the regular iPad Air be 2 sizes since they're basically the same thing. So it would just be iPad SE, iPad Pro. And in that iPad, you'd have a 7 point or 8 inch, whatever it's sized at now, and then the current size of the iPad. And then in the iPad Pro lineup, if you wanted to give what everybody seemingly wants online, which would be a Pro mini size, the 11 inch, and then the 14 or 13, whatever the new sizes would be in that time, then I just think that just makes things easier. Do like what you said with the Mac. Make it simple. One name, 2 sizes or 3 sizes, whatever sizes you want to be. We don't need to change the name based off of the size. It's never made sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
and the fact that you have iPad 10th gen and iPad 9th gen side by side that are totally different, one number apart, both called iPad. We gotta get rid of that. All right, Tim.
Do you know how many people constantly hit me up that like are not tech people but know that I am, and like will be like, what's the difference between the 9th gen and the 10th gen? I mean,
everything.
Yeah. Like there's a lot. How much time do you have? Like, and like, so it could make my life easier, Apple, if you just made it easier for everybody else to figure out what the differences were. Because at least a different name signifies a different product. For the most part.
Right.
Like if I saw iPad SE and iPad Pro, I would know, okay, well, one is probably going to be, and just by looking at the price tag, well, this one's going to have more features, and the other one is probably the least expensive one. And if they've even looked at an Apple product in the past and seen the term SE, then it's already associated with lower cost. So I don't know, just makes sense. But what do I know? I'm not running a $1 trillion company.
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree. I think the Apple could clean even without doing all of that, I think you could clean up the lineup by doing 2 very simple things. Step 1, kill the 9th gen iPad. Kill it now. No more Lightning, no more 2013 design. Get it out of here. And then I would just chop $100 off the iPad 10th gen. I don't even think it needs a chip upgrade, but just make it cheaper, $350, and I think you're good. I mean, the problem that I've had with that iPad is it's not inherently bad. Like, you know, it's just whatever the other iPads are minus some features at a lower price point. But it doesn't hit the recipe that the base model iPad has had for a long time now. You know, the 5th gen, 6th gen, 7, 8, 9, all of those were $329. They were the old design with a newer chip, kind of an iPad SE, and at a really good price. And every single one of those was really highly rated. But when we got to the 9th gen, we were kind of like, okay, maybe it's time to move on here. Let's get the new design. You know, it's been a couple years now. But then when Apple did give it the new design, they couldn't let go of that premium price tag. And $449 just, they kind of added it in the middle, which adds confusion and doesn't bring a ton of value. I mean, I get why they did it, because the new design obviously it's more expensive than the old one, but to have both of them, I think is just, they're not willing to let go of the old design on the cheapest possible model. Chop $100 off the 10th gen, kill the 9th gen, and I think it would be a lot better.
I think that was always the plan for that device. It's just a shame that it's had to go on for so long, and I guess it's because they just can't get that price down. Maybe they are sitting on an 11th gen iPad, and they just don't want to bring it out because that's going to increase the confusion even more. So they're selling a 9th gen and an 11th gen, and then you continue to have that device in a weird place. So I guess they are just waiting until they can get the price down. But I agree, I don't think it really even needs a chip upgrade. I think the bigger issue is just that confusion at that end of the lineup. But I also don't want to ignore the iPad Air, because I also think that is an issue. What is going on with the iPad Mini and with the iPad Air? Because they're effectively the same device, marketed differently. Okay, they've got different chips, and they've also got a different, one of them's got a True Tone flash. But they are basically the same sort of device. And I don't really think they're pleasing a lot of people. A lot of people either want the best or they want the sort of cheapest and most accessible. There's not a lot of people that want to go middle of the road here and think, well, I do want Stage Manager, and I do want a laminated display, but I don't care for mini LED, and I don't care for Thunderbolt, and I don't care for 2 cameras. I think that it's just in a weird place, that iPad Air. What I would like to see Apple do is, rather than just killing the Air completely and killing the Mini, is kind of merging the Air and the Pro and bringing the price down of the Pro just a little bit into that kind of Air territory. And I think that the iPad Pro would be way better and would come under so much less criticism if Apple stopped trying to say this is a computer and instead just said this is a really good iPad. This is the best iPad you can buy. And I think people would comprehend that way better as like, this is a media consumption device, and maybe you can do some like documents on it or some light work. You can even run Final Cut on it. But you're going to get the best possible display for this price point. But it's not a Mac. And I think that pushing it to like this marketing talk of it being a computer replacement at the top end is where I think a lot of this kind of bad feeling about the iPad has come from. And I even think Apple itself has got confused about what that even means for the iPad Pro.
This episode of the MacRumors Show is also sponsored by ZBiotics. Let's face it, after a night with drinks, I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. So here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut, where you need it the most. Just remember to drink ZBiotics before drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow, especially if you have 3 children that are 6 and under like I do. You cannot be off your game after a night of drinking, and ZBiotics was a game changer. I was able to feel great in the morning, play with my kids, and take them all to their weekend activities, and was feeling great the entire time. It's honestly incredible. So this Halloween, pair your candy and cocktails with ZBiotics to avoid a spooky next morning. Just go to zbiotics.com/Mac to get 15% off your first order when you use Mac at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code, so you can stay prepared no matter the time or occasion. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So just remember to head over to zbiotics.com/Mac and use the code MAC at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode. I think the easiest way to make it all kind of coexist with each other, going back to like when we were talking about macOS being on the iPad, I do think there's a place for it, and I do think it should only be in the Pros, and I think it should be done the way that Samsung does its kind of desktop experience with DeX. make it so that it only, it's only available on the Pros. I don't know if I want to limit it to just being when you plug into, like an external monitor. Like that's what it used to be in the past with decks. Now it's kind of just like whenever you want it. And it can be done wirelessly depending on the device and stuff. I just believe that that's like the best of both worlds. Like why can't we have some sort of emulation of macOS happening on a larger iPad that can definitely, the performance is not going to be a problem. And then, when you're not in that mode, you go back to iPadOS. And then every other iPad that's not a Pro model doesn't need to worry about it because it's just going to run iPadOS as it is right now.
That could be interesting. I always think that when you're talking about a new product with a new feature, whether it's hardware or software, I think a big question with Apple products is adding simplicity. Mm-hmm. I think when you're getting into this space where you're really trying to define a product by doing something to it, I think by definition you create confusion. Like, do you remember when the iPad, we got to go all the way back to the beginning. The iPad came out as essentially when your iPhone's too small and your MacBook's too big, your iPad fits in the middle. It's a hybrid device. That was a very clear market segment, and I think it made a lot of sense, and it was priced in that, $500. I think they did a great job with that. And after the iPad came out and it sort of launched this tablet craze, you saw Windows do their take on it, right? Those hybrid devices that were like, oh, okay, it's a tablet and a laptop. We got Windows 8. They had the ones where the screen flips around. You have the ones where the screen comes off. And you'll notice that a lot of those laptops didn't really catch on because while it seems convenient to try to have your device doing multiple duties, I don't know that it's has a proven record of being successful in terms of, being the next big thing. I think when you do that to a device, you're niching it down instead of what Apple likes to do, which is try to make it as broad as possible. And that doesn't always work either. I mean, I think they tried to do that with the iPad Pro. They tried to niche it up and make it into its own computer. But now we're running into this issue of like, well, is the iPad Pro, why does it have this pretense of replacing your laptop? You just add more complication to it. And I think it confuses people rather than solves their problems.
So the issue is, if I could speak selfishly, is that I do want an iPad and a Mac to somehow join together so that I've had a crazy travel schedule this year. And like, I don't want to keep taking those two devices because it's just too much. There's too much in my bag already with camera gear and all of that stuff. And I get made fun of tons of this because I'm like, well, I like to take this MacBook because it's lighter. And people are like, just be stronger. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea. First off, it's just a space issue. And second off, it's just my bag already weighs a ton without anything in it because it needs to be able to hold a ton. And when I put all that stuff in there, the lenses, the cameras, it's already super heavy. There is one compartment for your Mac, and I'm shoving a Mac and an iPad in there because on the plane, I want to be able to watch stuff on an iPad because it's just a better experience to do that than on your Mac in a more mobile, like on the go way. And I don't want to I want those two things to be separate. And so if there's a way to do that by like separating it via software and and hardware and combining it into one, like that would be ideal for me. And then I wonder if that would be ideal for others too, who like didn't know they needed it because if they're just looking at Apple products, you couldn't do that. So they never really thought about it. And so like that's what the iPad Pro was almost doing. And you could even make the argument that I could do that now because Final Cut Pro now exists for the iPad, but it's still just not the same experience as what I'm used to on my Mac. And that's ultimately what I just want, is that when I want my Mac to be able to be there in front of me, I want it to be Mac OS and operate the same way, and then I want to be able to just turn it into an iPad just easily and not kind of combine the two and give some these features and and then things change and then you got to relearn it and it just becomes a whole thing.
So
all right, so how about this? What if you had an iPad that when connected to, like, it's a normal iPad, it's iPad OS, and the second that smart connector connects to something with a trackpad, it pops into this like desktop mode where your apps go away, you have a normal desktop background, and you can drag windows around like Mac OS.
Yeah,
that would be kind of what you ask for.
I think a lot of it is also the cursor, like the way the cursor behaves on the iPad and your Mac is just super frustrating. Because when you're trying to do things like work in Final Cut Pro, I want it to be a normal cursor and I want it to be the normal app and not this mobile version of the Pro desktop app. And like, I am being very picky and not grateful because they did ultimately give us almost what we wanted and what we have been asking for many years. But it's not the same experience and it's missing some things that it makes me not want to use it. And I don't know. I like the idea of like, just Windows can do it and it goes into a tablet mode. Why can't you just do it on a Mac? Like, it just makes sense. You have tablet mode, which is iPad OS. You have Mac OS. And it just, and when you
those tablet mode Windows devices aren't really like, I don't think that there's a huge demand for that. Like, it's kind of been dying off in recent years because I don't think there's that many people, at least on the Windows side. I don't think there's that many people that are really, they really want that.
I'm aware that I'm probably one of a very select few people that would want this.
Just get Vision Pro. That solves your problem.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up.
Yep, that'll be it.
You can run Mac OS in Vision OS, or at least you can mirror it, which is really interesting considering that that is unthinkable on the iPad, and yet that's okay in
why
Vision
can't
OS
I mirror it on an
world.
iPad? Exactly.
But I do want to get your thoughts on this, Luke.
Well, you could use Sidecar.
Yeah,
do both.
Yeah, but I still have to bring my Mac with me.
Yeah.
But what I want to get your thoughts
on,
Luke, is my suspicion and my concern about Vision Pro is that it is the next iPad. It's not the next iPhone, it's the next iPad. And that 10 years from now, we're going to be having this conversation about Vision Pro. And I'm worried about that. Is that your sense of like where this product sits, and are they going to make the same mistakes with Vision Pro?
I don't think so, actually. I think the Vision Pro has a much more foreseeable pipeline for the next like 10 years, because I think it's really a product that can do a lot of different things. And some people posit that it's, it's the next iPhone. It's going to replace your iPhone. Some people say it's going to replace your Mac. Some people say it's going to replace your iPad. But I think that what makes it really interesting is that it can do all of those things. Like, that's what mixed reality offers. And it's not it's not so much that it can do completely brand new tasks, even in the way that Apple introduced it. They're doing messages, they're doing FaceTime, they're doing browsing in Safari. That's what we all do on all of our devices. But this is a new way of doing it. And I think at the very foundation, ignoring every specific detail about the product of Vision Pro, the concept of Vision Pro is it's your work, but it's all around you. And I think that has a lot more potential that we probably haven't even thought of yet. When the iPhone launched, Steve Jobs didn't anticipate the App Store. It launched with 16 apps that could not be moved, changed, deleted, or added to. And the App Store came next and was like, oh, duh, that makes a lot of sense. I think Vision Pro has a similar pipeline of, your workspace all around you kind of unlocks a whole bunch of stuff that I don't think we can even imagine, right?
I mean, definitely. I feel like the Vision Pro is going to be. I think a lot of people are, like you said, are saying it's going to replace this, it's going to replace that. I don't think it's going to replace anything for a while, but it is going to be something that could replace your iPhone if and when it ever becomes something that's less, it's got to be glasses. That's really the only way that I can see.
I mean, that's where we're going.
Right. But for now, it ain't replacing anything. It's going to be another thing you're going to have to worry about if you decide to get one. But I do think it's going to be something that I could be super exciting. It's just, what's it going to be good at the most? Is it going to be a good iPhone replacement, or like quote unquote, companion? Is it going to be a better version of an iPad? Is it going to be a better version of working with your Mac? I cannot tell you, even based off of my 30 minutes that I got with it. I can tell you that I did get the new MetaQuest 3, and infinitely better experience, in my opinion, on the MetaQuest 3 compared to the MetaQuest 2. But it's very early, so I'm kind of just saying. But compared to the Apple Vision Pro, from what I can remember, because now it's been almost 6 months, Apple is not going to have any problems. It's just not even close. At least in the pass through, mixed reality mode, it's not even close from what I remember.
And I think that's what Apple did so well with the Vision Pro. Mm-hmm. Like, when you look at Meta and their approach, it has been like, we're doing the metaverse, we're doing games, we're like, this is a completely new thing that you've never experienced before. You're going to go in the metaverse. Apple's not doing that. Apple isn't the type of company that's going to make you completely change everything that you do all at once. They don't want that learning curve. So when you get Vision Pro, there's a reason why all of the major stuff that they talked about is like stuff that you can already do, like FaceTime and messages and using applications on your Mac, mirroring your screen. Like, I think that the idea is you put this on and you're just like, oh, this is just all my stuff, but it's all around me now. Mm-hmm. And, like you mentioned, they just focused really hard on making that mixed reality look really good. It's not going to replace anything now, because obviously it's, this is a first gen product, but this is how you get that foundation that will, let's say 5-10 years from now, be a normal pair of glasses. Maybe it replaces your Apple Watch. Maybe it replaces your whole iPhone. I don't know. But that's, I think, where we're headed. And I think that has a pretty clear line of progression, Hartley, to your question. You can kind of see where we're going with that. Apps are going to come out, and maybe you can have, like, imagine Final Cut Pro without the confines of a rectangular screen. Maybe you have your viewer floating, your timeline, as something that you can physically reach out and grab and point and resize with your hands instead of a mouse. Just stuff like that. And then a couple of years later, as it gets smaller and lighter, more usable in public, maybe even presentable to go around and talk to your friends with it on. And you can definitely imagine how it gets to that point along the way.
So I think here's my worry. I don't want to be the bringer of doom about Vision Pro, but I want to play devil's advocate here. I agree that if we're talking like 20 or 30 years down the line, and we're talking about a really mature operating system that like rivals Mac OS, then I completely agree. And I also completely agree if they can pull off AR glasses. But as far as we know right now, AR glasses are not in the works. As far as we know, they took all the staff off that project because it was just not technically possible right now. And they've put all of the staff instead on working on this low-cost version of Vision Pro. So the glasses are probably quite a while off. So what I'm worried about is like maybe like 5 or 7 or 10 years down the line. So we haven't got the glasses yet. And we also don't have a super mature OS. And what I'm worried about is that we're seeing something now and like imagining the potential, but we could have done that with the iPad. So if we go back to 2011, we could say, oh, well, this thing, you know, in 10 years time, this could replace your Mac. This could replace, you know, a lot of what we use the iPhone for. And by then, you know, this new platform is so different to anything we've had before. The way of interacting with it is so different. You know, touch is way more versatile than indirect input. And yet, where are we? Well, a dozen years later at this point with the iPad, and it's kind of like ground to a halt. And that is what I'm worried about with Vision OS.
Well, Harley, when you put it like that and you make it so cheery, I mean,
no, I'm sorry,
damn, dude.
I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, no, because it makes sense.
Now I'm sad.
Yeah, now I am sad because I feel like you're right. It probably will end up being that way because it is kind of a divisive like thing. No one wants to wear like I've used this. I've had this thing for almost a week, and I've used it every day. I'm trying to like learn and do more with it because I'm just not a big VR person. And because I'm not a big I cannot talk. And because I am not a big VR person, you know, it's just I don't want to wear this thing all the time. So Apple needs to figure that out and give us a reason why. And I will say that I'm pretty sure it's going to be kind of like a Android versus iOS type thing where like the Meta's been around, the Meta Quests have been around for so long that they're just going to have way more things you can do, but like not a lot of them are very good. And then you're going to have like, you know, the whole iOS experience where it's like, yeah, you can't do a lot, but what you can do is amazing. So take your pick. And also this is way more expensive. So figure it out for yourself. So yeah, I don't know how we got on. I will say, I mean, I know the correlation, but I don't know how we got here. But
because I think they're the same kind of product, to me at least.
Yeah,
they can be. I think I see where you're going with that because I see the fear of it going down that iPad route where a couple people doing specific tasks will find it really incredible and a bunch of people will not really find it all that useful. But the one big question mark that we all still haven't addressed because it doesn't exist yet is third-party apps. Like what we are seeing right now is just the foundation of Vision OS that Apple has laid out. I think when the iPad first came out, there was that whole wave of like, oh, now we have this big screen to play with. We can do a whole bunch of different stuff. And you're right, it did slow down. I mean, if you look up, it's a podcast, so you're just going to have to trust me because I can't show a visual. But if you look up the volume of iPads sold by year, the peak that has still not been beaten was 2014 or 2013 because that was when the iPad Air came out. So those 2 years, that was the peak sales of the iPad because that's when the initial concept of the iPad grew to a point where I think it reached a pinnacle. That's where everyone was like, okay, we have a thin and light device that does iOS stuff on a big screen for $500. And then after that, that's where your fear comes in. You know, once you get to that point, that was 4 or 5 years into the iPad. Does Vision Pro go down that same path of like, okay, well, what are we adding to this? Why should I be upgrading this device? What is it going to continue to expand to do? The difference is, I think Vision Pro, by its very nature of being immersive and having mixed reality, has a little bit more flexibility than the iPad, which from the very start was iOS but bigger. And it kind of still is stuck in that in some ways. iPad OS is still very obviously iOS inspired, and I think that's a key limitation. But with Vision, I think it kind of frees you from those constraints just a little bit more to the point where I'm not personally as worried that it's going to go down the iPad route.
I think the thing that makes me have the most hope, especially after using the MetaQuest 3, is like I'm going back into my my memory bank of what it was like. And granted, they already had it set up. I don't know, like the setup process for the most part. I still had to go through a little bit of a process to get it like fit for me and for it to work with me. But like, it's just so much easier getting it on your face. You put it on and you adjust like one or two things on the side. And once you do that and get it to where you don't have to do that again. I find myself constantly doing that with the MetaQuest 3. I'm adjusting straps. It's moving. I feel ill because I'm like, this isn't super clear on some things. And like watching some videos, like it's like something happens with the way it, when you are in full screen and it like brings it closer to you, and then you have to like adjust the little dials to like get the lenses to move back or forth. I don't even really know what it's doing, but it's doing something where it's moving, I think maybe from like the distance apart. And like, you just don't have to do any of that with the Apple Vision Pro. And when I had it on, my only complaint was like, yeah, some of this doesn't look as crisp, from the fit issue that I'm having. And if I adjust the strap and like it can fit just a little bit higher up, it was perfect. But even when it wasn't sitting up like higher up, it was infinitely better quality than what I get at its peak best with this MetaQuest 3. So like, there are just so many. And the fact that I don't have to carry around the dumb controllers. Now, I know that there is an option to use your hand, and it does work. I'll give it that, but like, not good. It's not. It is not anywhere near as good as the way you start to navigate without controllers on the Apple Vision Pro. Using your hand on that device was seamless. It was perfect. It never had any issues. I cannot say that with my very brief time with the MetaQuest so far. So like, I get hope that it's just so much better than what's already out there that it could make what people like me have as kind of reserves against this type of product. They can kind of feel a little more at ease that it doesn't operate in the same way, and it's a lot better, and it's not even out yet. So I don't know. I'm not biased, I promise.
Dude, I hope more than anything that there will be, whether through Apple directly or through a third party, the ability to use the Vision Pro as a VR headset for gaming. Because I agree with you. Like, I've tried VR headsets. I do not own one because they all made me like nauseous. And playing VR games, like, it would be very cool to be immersed in a game, but unless it's like perfect, I hate it. And I think Vision Pro could be obviously very expensive. I don't know that there was that many people that would actually buy it just to do that. But I really hope that someone makes an app that lets you plug into your PC and play a video game on Vision Pro. I'm really crossing my fingers for that.
Like not even like a VR experience, just like using it as a display.
Well, in VR, yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to
make sure. I'm sure you would be able to use it as a gigantic virtual display for like a normal confines. Yeah. That in itself is very cool. Yeah. But if they can make it such that it can do a full VR, oh man, I'm sold. That's just one more thing.
I'm just sitting here thinking about it, how I'm going to spend $3,500 so that I can lay in bed and fall asleep in 30 seconds watching something on my Vision Pro. Or at least it'll be one of those.
Every time I go on an airplane now, I'm like, oh, this is going to be so nice.
Yeah. I'm going to be that weirdo at first, and I cannot wait.
Oh, me too. I'm fully embracing it. And the thing is, we're going to be on airplanes, and we're not even going to get to enjoy the content because everyone around you is just going to be like, is that a Vision Pro? What is that? What are you wearing? And you're going to have to explain it to your neighbors.
Yeah. Let them try it on. Then I'll get some kind of disease.
Ugh. Pink eye.
Huge pink eye epidemic because of Apple Vision Pro and everybody.
Imagine like, the what do they call? I forget the name. The little eye screen on the front. Do you think that when you get pink eye, it's gonna show on that screen? You'd be like,
by the way, I don't actually think you're too cheap if you don't buy an Apple Vision Pro. It is wildly expensive, so that was a joke.
Yeah.
I don't want people yelling at me saying that I called them too cheap for not spending $3,500 of their own. That is an absurd amount. Wait until it gets cheaper, or just do it. I don't know, YOLO. You might die. Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows if we're even going to be around in another like 2-3 years. Just do it. Yeah. Send it.
Hartley's talking about 20, 30 years down the road. And I was sitting here thinking, like, dude, I'm going to be in my 60s in 30 years. Like, I will not care at all. So you guys do whatever you want.
Yeah, just live in the moment. I'm not look, think about it this way. 30 years ago, Apple released the first laptop. Like the laptop as a concept that we consider modern has only been around for 30 years. 30 years is so far. I never think more than like 2 years ahead of time when it's tech, right? I saw the rumor, a 32-inch iMac Pro in 2025. I'm like, that's not even a real time. We're not even going to be around then. If it's not like, oh, next quarter, that's not real.
Hartley knows my disdain for future rumors.
Yeah, I hate those. I hate 2 years from now, Apple's going to do something cool.
This was going to be my next question. Because if that's AR, VR, one thing I'm interested in is this foldable iPad that is rumored.
Yep.
So we had another report about that today. And I do think that is coming. And what this report from Digitimes was saying was that this could be announced next year. And, you know, there are other reports. Ming-Chi Kuo was also initially at least backing that time frame. I don't know whether he still is. So do you think that a foldable iPad could kind of re-inject some life into the iPad, or is it just is that just a gimmick? Does it need software improvement? Where do we stand on a foldable iPad?
So one thing that I like is that it adds a new dimension. I'm not sure exactly how they would use it, but I think the iPad feels a little stale because it hasn't really changed all that much in the last like 5 years. So adding that new dimension could be cool. What I don't like is the inevitable added cost, because you have to imagine a foldable 12.9-inch iPad Pro would have to be $1,700, $1,800, $1,900.
Oh, I think it would be more than that.
Whatever you gain from that new dimension.
Oh yeah, way more than that.
I don't know that you retain it. Yeah, more probably $2,000 at least.
2,500, I'm guessing.
Well, because the OLED iPad Pros that are rumored
and at
for
that
next
point,
year
I'm like,
due to
dude,
get a price hike anyway. So we're talking like it's got to be like,
which is already crazy,
like $2,500.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting toward Vision Pro pricing.
I was just gonna say, if I'm paying $2,500 for an iPad that folds in half, I might as well have an iPad that's also a Mac that's all around me.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a bit of an interesting squeeze.
I don't know.
Well, I'm glad we're ending on such a high note here. You know, Apple Vision Pro, whether or not it's going to fail, no one wants to buy a $2,500 iPad that can fold. So if you guys made it this far and you're not completely depressed, please, Luke, tell us where we can hear you more, find you, watch more of your stuff. I know you have a podcast and a channel. Go ahead, plug away.
It's so much. All right, where do you even begin? You can follow me on Twitter at Luke Miani for unhinged thoughts. You can hit me up on YouTube, also Luke Miani. Very simple. That's the general theme. If you want to tune into my podcast, that's Dark Mode. That's the only thing that's not just my name.
Yeah, just Google him and everything will pop up.
Honestly, that's fair. I should have just said that.
Yeah. I think we can say that with everybody. Also, I need to start having people pitch in the beginning of the episodes because
that's a good idea.
I don't know how many people make it this far. There are some people. We have some pretty diehards, because we'll get comments that were like about things that are really late in the episode, and I'm like, damn, good for you guys. Thank you. Appreciate
Respect.
You. Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it this far.
I wouldn't either, and it's our own podcast. So
yeah.
With that said, everybody, thank you, and we'll catch you all in the next episode.